The GZ66 is a light-duty, all-wheel drive Soviet truck that became a true off-road icon in the mid-60s. It was impressive for its capabilities. It transported cargo and personnel, towed artillery, and carried ammunition. A variety of superstructures were mounted on its chassis. With its sturdy, bulldog-like four-wheel stance, the GZ66 easily conquered rough terrain, forded rivers, and climbed steep slopes. This truck proved useful not only in the army, but also in civilian life. It became popular in agriculture and various services. After the collapse of the USSR and the reduction of army stockpiles, these trucks ended up in private hands and were often used for off-road recreation, tourist trips to the mountains, and journeys into the wilderness. What made this truck one of the best all-terrain vehicles of its time? Why can it be called the Flying One? And why were Soviet army drivers afraid to drive it during the war in Afghanistan? You'll find the answers to these questions, as well as lots of other interesting information about the GZ66, by watching our video. But the origins of the GZ66 truck go all the way back to 1940, when engineers at the Gorky Automobile Plant developed the first Soviet two-axle, all-wheel drive truck, the GZ62, with a payload capacity of 2 tons. The vehicle was equipped with a 6-cylinder gasoline engine, the GZ11, with a displacement of 3.5 liters and an output of 76 horsepower. The design of this power unit was based on the American Dodge D5. The cab for the all-wheel drive truck was borrowed from another Gorky model, the GZMM. Despite its promise, mass production of the truck was never established. The reason for this was the invasion of German troops into the territory of the Soviet Union. In a situation where the country faced mortal danger, there was no time for experiments. The front needed simple, reliable, and proven trucks. Work on this project was resumed only after the war. The post-war prototype, built in October 1952, showed clear design similarities to the famous American military trucks Dodge 3x4, which, under the Lend-Lease program during World War II, were supplied in large numbers to the Soviet Army. This vehicle was distinguished by its exceptional simplicity, reliability, and ease of repair. And thanks to its well-balanced weight distribution and large diameter wheels, this car had good off-road capability. Having inherited the American genes, the GZ62 demonstrated decent performance during testing. In terms of its design, it was a mix between an all-terrain station wagon, a pickup, and even a four-wheel drive truck. Despite its rather bulky dimensions and a 6-cylinder engine producing 76 horsepower, the vehicle's payload capacity was only 1 ton. Perhaps it was precisely these not-so-impressive characteristics that led to the truck never being put into mass production. As we can see, the first Soviet four-wheel drive trucks with the 4x4 wheel configuration just couldn't make it into mass production. But that's not all. At the same time as the station wagon and the truck under the GZ62 index, a small tactical cab-over truck with a payload capacity of 1 ton was also being developed by order of the Ministry of Defense of the USSR. The cab-over all-wheel drive model was intended to be adopted by the airborne troops and was supposed to perform the following functions: towing battalion-level anti-tank guns with their crews and ammunition in the cargo bed, transporting small arms and mortar weaponry along with crews and ammunition, and most importantly, the truck had to be adapted for airlifting by helicopters and military transport aircraft. That's why the GZ62 was given compact dimensions and a cab with removable side windows, a folding windshield, and a canvas roof. Like the previous GZ62 trucks, this modification never went into mass production. In total, 48 vehicles were produced from 1959 to 1962. Afterwards, the Army rejected this truck. However, work on developing a light, all-wheel drive, two-axle truck did not stop there. The technical developments and cab-over design of the GZ62 would be used at the Gorky Automobile Plant to create the hero of our story today, the GZ66 truck, which people simply called Shishka or Shishka because of its numerical index. The first prototypes of this truck were built at the Gorky plant in 1962. This model was intended to be a compromise solution. On one hand, the GZ66, like the GZ62, had a cab-over engine design and could continue to be used in airborne troops, but on the other, as a compromise, the payload capacity of the new model almost doubled, from 1 1/10 tons to 2 tons. Thus, it was planned to expand the truck's functionality in the Army and not limit its use only to airborne troops. The GZ-66 was intended to become a general-purpose tactical truck for the military, replacing the outdated all-wheel drive bonnet military trucks GZ-63, which had been produced since 1948. The GZ-66 served as a testing ground for experiments. Various innovative technical elements were used in the design of these trucks. Cam-type differentials with an automatic locking mechanism, which improved torque transmission and enhanced the vehicle's off-road capabilities. The tractive force of a vehicle with a cam-type differential on a slippery road is almost twice as high as with a conventional one. This was the main reason for the high off-road capability of the GZ-66 trucks. In addition, vacuum brake boosters, a hydraulic steering booster, a hypoid main gear, a metal cargo platform, and a windshield washer were used. Mounting the spare wheel vertically behind the cab made it possible to lower the floor level of the cargo platform. The truck was equipped with an 8-cylinder V-shaped gasoline engine, the ZMZ66, with a displacement of 4.2 liters and a power output of 115 horsepower. The block of this engine was cast from aluminum, and therefore had a significantly lower weight than the traditional cast iron engine blocks used in the USSR. To make starting easier in winter, the engine was equipped with a preheater. The gearbox is a 4-speed manual with synchronizers on the 3rd and 4th gears. The distribution of torque between the two drive axles was handled by a transfer case with a 2-stage reducer. The rear axle was permanently driven, while the front axle was engaged as needed. The vehicle was not equipped with an interaxle differential. The suspension of the GZ-66 uses semi-elliptical leaf springs and telescopic shock absorbers. The braking system is of the drum type, with hydraulic drive and an additional vacuum booster. The truck's cab is a 2-seater, all-metal, positioned above the engine, and equipped with a heater and windshield washer. The windshield is 2-sectioned, with vertical window inserts in the wide front pillars of the cab. The cabin is designed to accommodate a hanging sleeping berth in the form of a hammock. To access the engine, the truck cab tilts forward. The cargo platforms of the first pre-production GZ-66 trucks were wooden, borrowed from the GZ-51 trucks. Thanks to its compact dimensions and a curb weight of 3.6 tons, the GZ-66 was actively used in airborne troops. For this purpose, a special modification called the GZ-66B was even built, which was equipped with a cab featuring removable side windows, a folding windshield, and a folding canvas roof. This design made it quite convenient to airdrop the vehicle aboard helicopters or military transport aircraft. The cab over-engine layout allowed the vehicle's weight to be distributed evenly between the two axles. During parachute drops, the truck, attached to a special metal platform, maintained its balance and didn't tip forward like conventional bonnet trucks did. Due to engine supply issues, the first pre-production trucks were built only in November 1963, and mass production of the GZ-63 began in July 1964. In the first year, only 500 vehicles rolled off the assembly line. After that, production gradually increased. In 1965, 3,500 trucks were built. In 1967, 8,500 GZ-60 SIXS, and in 1968, the number of vehicles produced reached 13,000. That same year, production of the long-baited military all-wheel drive GZ-63 vehicles was discontinued. GZ-66 trucks could also be additionally equipped with various technical devices: a power takeoff shaft, protective shielding for electrical equipment, or a towing winch designed for self-recovery. Since 1968, GZ-66 trucks began to be equipped with centralized tire inflation systems, which allowed the driver to easily increase or decrease tire pressure from the cab using an additional compressor. Until 1968, the GZ-66 equipped with additional mechanisms was designated by a separate letter index in its name. After 1968, the letter indices were replaced with numerical ones. There were also attempts to build the GZ-66P tractor unit, but the project did not progress beyond the prototype stage. Attempts to start production of the 3-axle GZ-66 also ended in failure. The GZ-66 chassis was also used for mounting various superstructures, firefighting tanks, tanks for fuel and lubricants, as well as frameless panel vans, which were used to house mobile workshops, communications equipment, or medical equipment for evacuating the wounded. Such models received their own separate indices in their names. AP2 Avtoprovidnaya, Mobile Dressing Vehicle, the main transport unit of a regiment's medical station. There was also a separate sanitary vehicle, the S-66, which was intended for evacuating the wounded. In addition, the GZ-66 was used as a delivery van truck for transporting bread, mail, and medicines. The high off-road capability of the GZ-66 was ensured by the identical track width of the front and rear wheels with wide-profile tires and a large ground clearance of 30 centimeters. The vehicle's ability to easily overcome off-road conditions was aided by such successful engineering solutions as a centralized tire inflation system, cam-type differentials with automatic locking, a winch, and an 8-speed transmission. In addition, the truck featured a low center of gravity and a large power reserve, which allowed the vehicle to reach speeds of 90 kilometers per hour and climb hard-packed slopes with a steepness of 37 degrees or soft sandy inclines with a 22-degree gradient. The vehicle could also ford water up to 1 meter deep. Starting in 1981, the GZ-66 was equipped with new lighting equipment, and from 1984, the entire GZ-66 family underwent modernization. The truck received a new dual-circuit braking system. A road train sign was installed on the roof of the vehicle. The engine power was increased to 120 horsepower. The modernized version of the Shishiga received a new designation, GZ-66-11. The new modification began rolling off the assembly line in January 1985. By the early 80s, the number of trucks produced had increased to 40,000 per year. In addition to the Army, the GZ-66 was supplied in large quantities to the national economy, collective farms and forestry enterprises, various services, and for construction. During operation, along with its advantages, some serious drawbacks also became apparent, which were specifically related to the cab-over-engine design. In the GZ-66, the engine ended up inside the cabin, between the driver and the passenger. Because of this, the cab was positioned high above the ground, had an inconvenient entry and exit, was cramped, and could only seat 2 people. The engine also further heated up the cabin and was a source of noise. In the summer heat, trips in the GZ-66 were unbearable. But all these drawbacks were actually barely noticeable inconveniences for Soviet drivers, who were used to Spartan working conditions. However, the real flaw of the cab-over-engine design, one could even call it deadly, was discovered during the war in Afghanistan. In the GZ-66, the driver's and passenger's seats were located above the front axle wheels. That's why, very often, even the explosion of a small landmine triggered by driving over it would result in the deaths of the driver and passenger. After several such incidents where GZ-66 trucks were blown up by mines, the Soviet military command in Afghanistan decided to stop using these trucks, replacing them with bonnet models in which the front axle was located far ahead of the cab. The deadly incidents involving mine explosions during the Afghan war had a negative impact on the reputation of the GZ-66 in the army. Production was gradually reduced. But it truly collapsed after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The collapse of the planned economy, the massive downsizing of the army, and the new realities of an open market economy, where it was necessary to compete with the products of leading global automotive companies, led to a rapid decline in the production of the GZ-66. If in 1989 the plant in Gorky produced 40,000 trucks, by 1995 this number had dropped to less than 2,000. And there were objective reasons for this. The army, which had been reduced several times over and was deprived of funding, no longer needed new military trucks. On the contrary, they themselves didn't know what to do with the large number of vehicles that were kept in storage at many military units. At the plant in Gorky, they began looking for new areas where the GZ-66 could be used. Special modifications were created for the civilian market, the GZ-66-21, which were equipped with dual rear wheels and full wooden cargo beds with a carrying capacity of 3.5 tons. Other factories also joined in the search for a new role for the military GZ-66. For example, agricultural dump trucks as SAZ-3511 were created, as well as a utility service vehicle, the KO-440-1. Crew buses and an AZ-3964 were also built on the GZ-66 chassis. To improve efficiency, some GZ66 vehicles were fitted with turbo diesel engines producing 116 horsepower. Despite all the modernization efforts and the search for new uses, production of the GZ66 was steadily reduced and officially ceased on July 1, 1999. Although some vehicles continued to be produced for a while on individual orders using pre-prepared stockpiles of parts. In total, during its production run from 1964 to 1999, nearly 970,000 GZ66 trucks were manufactured. Most of the trucks that were used or stored in the Army ended up in private hands during the period of active disarmament. In civilian life, the military truck was transformed into a utilitarian all-terrain vehicle, or even a mobile glamping unit, allowing people to venture into impassable wilderness and comfortably live there for several days or even weeks. And although it's hard for it to compete in terms of comfort with modern vehicles of this class, it will never let you down and could even serve as the kind of vehicle that would save you in a post-apocalyptic world.